Hey everyone, welcome to the Awaken as Love podcast, and Anisa is speaking. I hope you all have had a beautiful week. I'm really grateful to be here with you and to have you listening to my sharing today. If you haven't heard my previous podcast, The Path of the Heart, I recommend listening to that. It was a really beautiful conversation with my dear friend Magnus Ahlberg, who lives in north of Sweden. And I really feel it was a really beautiful conversation about love and existence and just being in the spiritual path, the path of deep remembrance. Today, I want to speak about race, gender, and consciousness. Now, this is a very loaded topic. And I'm going to speak about it from as many sides of the shape of race that I am connected with. Now, I don't assume to have all the answers. I don't assume to my perspective to be right for anyone or everyone. I'm speaking from my perspective, and my intention is to hold as many fractals of this complex experience as honestly and as real to my personal experience, and as holding as many people and perspectives as possible, because I feel the conversation of race gets flattened so much, and that flatness isn't necessarily wrong, right? There's a truth to that, but then how can we also create a widening perspective that also has truth and be in relationship with that? So I might say things that are triggering. I might say things that are wrong for you. I might say things that are perhaps even wrong for me at certain times in my being with myself, and it feels right for me at other times of being with myself. I hesitate to talk about this because it's such a complex and nuanced topic, and I really feel that it's alive, like it's a living entity, and I feel like it's, the way race holds a consciousness, especially me coming from the States, there is such a way it wants to be so strict and steady, and this is exactly what it means. And my connection with spirit and consciousness creates a fluidity that contradicts that and also supports that, and also all the things. And, I have my personal lived experiences being in a Black body, growing up where I did and how I did. And yeah, my experience is valid. And that is what I'm speaking to today, but also a lot of parts of my experience may not be resonant to others, and parts of my experience might be. So I'm just preferencing that because I really do feel like it's such a tumultuous topic, and I feel like that's why so many people in spiritual communities don't talk about it. But we have to, and we have to be willing to be wrong or incorrect and to make mistakes, because it's only going through the field of the landmines that we can really see what's on the other side. And if we just stop and speculate and stare at it and just let one perspective run the show, we don't actually get to expand and grow. And maybe we'll find that if we trigger a landmine, something might blow, but it might not mean our death in the way we think it will, or maybe it will in a way that leads to our greater life. I guess I'm just wanting to share this experience of mine and lean into the courageousness of expressing more of what I've experienced. So I'm going to see how this goes, and I'm going to talk about my experience of race, gender, and consciousness from maybe a more linear, lived, known experience to a perhaps more witness, expanded state. And then I'm going to attempt to sort of be in the middle of those. And I'm going to say this now, and I'm probably going to say it again. No one thing is right all the time. I really do feel like we're in a subjective reality, and within us are subjective realities. So in one part of our energetic body, we could be racist. We could be showing conditionings around how we perceive Black, brown bodies in this space. and act from judgments. Another part of us could be so in our power and in love and in God inside of us that we really see each other as spirit. And just because we have that one experience doesn't mean we can't also have experiences of when we are internalizing and expressing patriarchy and racism and misogyny. And this is sort of the complexity of this. I think when people assume that they are one or the other, like either they're like completely just in oneness, unity, and are not affected by the conditioning of our society, and they completely don't realize the moments that they can be externalizing racism or misogyny. And then the other perspective is being so caught in this perspective, and so I'm talking about white people, so caught in a perspective of white guilt or shame or so political correctness that they're not connected with their own sense of self. So I guess I was specifically talking about white people when I was thinking about this. And so this is also the challenge or the nuance, because I don't feel, because of the way race is held within our collective sphere, I do feel depending on our body, we kind of show up inside of the complexity in unique ways. And there, of course, are very many similarities, but also I feel that there are many differences. And so there's no one absolute truth. Like, and so for myself in a Black brown body, there are moments when I feel so much myself as a soul and spirit, and my brownness or Blackness is just another extension of that. It's not laden with the history of slavery and racism that when I'm in the States, it feels like it's the only thing that's present. And then there's other times when I feel so much the like external weight of the Black body and like how that is perceived, and how I perceive myself as being a myriad of aspects, and some people will perceive me only within the Blackness of my skin. And so even though I know myself as an eternal being, I know myself as soul, it doesn't mean I don't also have times of contraction when, or rather, it doesn't have to be seen as a negative or positive movement. It's just sitting in the wound that's present within the way race has been lived through in the States and as an extension in the world. And so as I'm speaking, I guess I just want to give space to how we're all like in flux, and we're all in different stages of like unity consciousness and deep separation trauma, and race just being one expression or iteration of that trauma. Okay, so sharing that, I guess I was going to share first around the just more linear aspects of racism. And I gotta say, for me personally, I think also being in Peru, I'm just not really triggered or activated by race. Like it just is. Like it doesn't, nothing intrinsically has value. It's only what the value we give it to. And so me being Black, it's just a part of me being a part of a diverse and vibrant natural environment. It doesn't have to mean anything, but you know, in the context of certain areas in the world, it can mean a lot of things. But because the way I live, and for the majority, of course, it comes up in every environment. Doesn't mean it doesn't come up a lot among the Westerners here. It's just that I'm mostly alone, and therefore I'm mostly in myself as soul and existence, and so I'm not really triggered by that. So what I'm going to actually talk about is something that I saw on YouTube a few days ago, so I can like kind of give reference point to my own experience. It's just that I've received racism like throughout my life. I think that's such a obvious comment, but I think if I don't talk about it, do people think I haven't experienced it? And I don't. You know, it's that funny thing of I'm never not a Black woman, but if I'm not speaking to it, am I not? If I'm not speaking about it, am I somehow not speaking to it? And yet, of course, if I'm seen, like, I must be seen as that. And so anyway, yeah, I remember when I was little, I was really light skinned, like lighter than I am now, because I was like young, and because I hadn't yet spent years outside in deserts and farming and all the things I've done that has darkened my skin. My dad would tell me that I'm black, and I would say, no, Daddy, I'm brown. Like, I would point to black things, like the black TV screen, and like black, like the color black, and I would look at my skin, and I'm like, this color is called brown, and I'm like light brown. My dad's like, no, you're black, because that's how the world will see you, and so therefore, like, that's how you are, or something like this. And I remember being really confused, and I remember feeling like, but I don't understand, like, the color of my skin is brown, I just don't. And I remember just not grokking it, and not knowing why it had to be called a color that I wasn't, and I, like, not understanding identification. And I feel like this was really my first conscious encounter with, like, race. Maybe I was quite young when we had this conversation, like maybe 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. And there are probably instances I've had before, but maybe I wasn't conscious of it. I feel like this is my first conscious understanding of that my body means something to the outside world, and that they'll define it outside of my own definition, and that definition will mean something to me in my life. And I think that was the thing my dad was trying to impress on me, that I was really adamant and I wanted to refuse. I didn't understand how someone's definition of me could actually impact and have weight on my existence, when it was actually, in my mind, not reality. Because in reality, the color of my skin is brown, but there's a turn to being black, and like what the black body means in the consciousness of the States and in the consciousness of whiteness. And I want to say now, I really do feel like whiteness is an energy, and it's an energetic field that we're all living within. And it's not necessarily a person, like, yeah, there are white people, but whiteness is something that we all live within and we all have within us, regardless of our skin color. I feel like we are many in the patriarchy, and all of these things it's not just white men, right? It's not just men. It's an energy body that we've all accepted as true, and we all connotate and respond to ourselves from that. Okay, so I remember the first time I was called, and I'll have to say the N-word because I don't like saying that word. I was called the N-word for the first time, maybe the only time to my face that I'm aware of, when I was, I don't know, it was high school. Yeah, it was high school, maybe like freshman or sophomore year. Yeah, and I remember I was in this town called Breezy Point, which is like very racist. But I went to a Catholic school, like an Irish Catholic school, kind of. I grew up in Black neighborhood, like predominantly Black, brown, Hispanic, Jamaican neighborhood. But I always went to schools where there were majority white people. Like, I went to Montessori, then I went to Catholic school, then I went to a private school in Brooklyn, like all in Brooklyn. So yeah, and so a lot of my friends were from like white neighborhoods. And and I remember at a party, I was like helping my friend out, and I remember because I was quite confident for many years of my life before the world crushed me for about a decade, and then I reemerged again. And I think we were having a party at a friend's house, and their parents didn't know, or the parents, and I was trying to give everyone attention, and someone said, "Shut up," N-word, and I was just like, wow. And like, no one seemed to care. I mean, of course no one cares, because like, I mean, that doesn't mean anything to those people there. But I was so taken out of my body, I was so, wow, like, I am so many things, and to be called that is just to be the pigmentation. It's like, it's not even just to be seen as a body, it's like just to be seen as a pigmentation, like as melanin. It's like even less than body. It's like just the color. It's like, first I'm a color, then I'm a body, and then I'm a woman. And it's really, especially when you're as interesting and multifaceted and fascinating as myself, it's so shocking to the nerve. It just doesn't make sense, and This is my interaction with racism. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But that's, that's a trauma response. Like, the whole thing is it doesn't make sense. It's trauma. Trauma doesn't make sense. It just happens. It's just in our systems. So that was another experience. I remember in college, I mean, there's many. I'm just saying a few. I remember in college, someone who I said thought of as a friend, he really wasn't a friend at all, but he told me that guys at our university didn't like me because I was Black. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. And also, I didn't know how I really reacted to that. It was just it's like one of those things. I remember when I was traveling in Thailand, there were these guys from Scandinavia, and they were just being so racist towards me. It's ridiculous. I couldn't say anything without them making fun of me and kind of putting it within the connotation of like Black speak or ghetto slang or whatever. And it was just like I couldn't do anything without being a stereotype. And I was so confused. I remember at one time I was babysitting in Manhattan. And I was in town, I think, to this Irish family, actually. And the son, I would babysit him a few times. And one time we were watching, I think something came on the TV. I don't even know. Something came on TV, I guess. And it was a Black person speaking in like slang. And the little kid, I think he was like 7 or 8. He's like, you speak like that. And I was like... excuse me, then I'm going to start speaking in slang, because I'm like, wait, do you hear how it's like, wait, so I'm like, this whole time, you can only hear the color of my skin. Like, you actually did not, because I don't speak like that. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with speaking like that. I can speak like that if I want to, but on the daily, I'm not speaking in like ghetto slang. And so and I was like, no, I don't. He's like, yes, you do. And he was just, this little boy was just so certain that I speak in ghetto slang on the daily. It might have been the third or fourth time I babysat him. And I was really, I'm like, wow, only the color of my skin is heard. Like, I'm not heard. This thing of like color, like I'm only a color and the rest of me cannot be perceived. And it's so, yeah, it's terrible. So I'm just sharing some of these experiences I've had because they're real. It happens. This is something that happens in the world. And I have too many of these to share, but I guess I'm wondering if I need to share this last one. Because then I older, and I think this isn't the last time I lived in the States for a significant amount of time, but this is the last time I lived in the States before I really started understanding ancestral healing and really working with the energies that's present in this. And so I will share this because this segues me into the next aspect of this, which is looking at this from pain and trauma and not within the duality of Black-white racism. So I worked on a farm in Vermont before I came to Peru for the first time. This is now like 4 years ago, 2017, summer of 2017. I worked on this farm in Vermont, and it was a farm and also social justice activist retreat center. And I was really excited because I had visited before, and it really felt like at this point, I've been farming for years, but somehow I felt like I haven't really learned as much as I wanted to. And I was, in this sense, I just felt like I was given woman roles, which is, gender is a very derivative way of looking at roles and tasks, but I was really put to clean and to cook, and I wanted to be out there really doing farming tasks. But so many times in these farms, sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't, but also with the nature of my life, I guess I just wasn't as enmeshed as I wanted to, and I really wanted to learn all the aspects of being self-sustaining. There were many aspects of this farm experience that just really didn't resonate with me and wasn't for me. Okay, so at this point, my clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient aspects are online, still coming online, but are quite online. And I'm quite sensitive to spirits, and I was seeing a lot of Native American spirits on the land, and I was feeling a lot of the tensions of culture and race, and just like the bloodshed of native people. And I was the only woman on staff, and I was the only Black woman for probably 100, I would say, I was always make the joke, like 150-mile radius each way, probably. I mean, being in Vermont. And I didn't realize the extent that I would feel that too. You know, I had someone reflect to me. It was like experiencing psychic racism, because it's this thing that happens that neoliberal people who are very, with the best of intentions, but like have this filter inside around blackness or race that creates this weird interaction when there is actually a black person, because there's so many liberal people living on the East Coast. They're mostly surrounded by white people, especially if you're not in a city. Like if you're not in a city, it's pretty much white. Like there's just not much diversity. And me loving farming and like loving being outside, you know, I'm very much an exception to that. And I would spend time in natural environments, but this was not very diverse, and it created a lot of tension. I'm not like going super into it. One, because I really work better in response. If someone was here asking me a question, I would be able to like really recall all the nuances I was experiencing to more detail. And two, it's just not as present for me. But something that would happen there, I would work with the woman, and I would like remember something with my hands in the soil and like feeling the blood in the soil and feeling like the history, the lineage of people that had shed that blood, and then my lineage of people that have received that blood shed, and just like feeling the tension, but not really being in a state in myself. Like at that point, understanding the energetic aspect of this and being able to put it into words was not yet present for me, and no one is really doing that work, you know, and it was really like the tipping point for me that I just couldn't continue farming and communal living until I really understood healing, until I really understood how to heal myself and my ancestry and support other people in healing themselves and their ancestry, or else we couldn't really be together, because in the silence was just so much trauma, especially in the States. And while I was there is when I was first introduced to constellations. Someone came, and there was this work partner came, and they did family constellations. I actually received my first constellation and ancestral things. It's the first time really feeling the pain of my ancestry. Not the first time, but like in a really, I think the most expansive time I felt the pain of my ancestry. And yeah, it was really powerful. And I'm just recalling the way my body would just react to the energetic weight of being there and just not having the outlet. So this really bridges me to the next part of this, which is pain and trauma. And so I have what can be seen as a controversial theory that that there is only one pain. Like the pain of the perpetrator, victim, and bystander is one. And that this idea that the perpetrator inflicted pain on the victim is in some ways incorrect. If we were able to zoom out, recognize that everyone's in pain, it's actually the same pain. And I feel that when we're able to really sit with that in compassion, the hate, the ugliness, the violence that's like still present, especially in places like the States where there's so much trauma and pain based on culture and pigmentation, color of skin, has a capacity to actually evolve. So this is after this time on the farm, and before I came to Peru for the first time, I received this channeled message, this download. The week before I went to Peru, I couldn't stop writing. I wrote this like massive document, and I was just channeling. I was channeling. It's very long. and there's so much to it that I won't really go into it, but something that came through for me in that document was something I call empathy thirds, which is something that I teach, share, like kind of open up that perspective in my course into Soul Wisdom, and generally in my work with people, just kind of looking at things in Trinity energy through Trinity consciousness. It's called, and like being empathic to that. And what I received from the channeling was that what happened in 1492, and this is just one point in his story, in the story of mankind that's gotten us here. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a conception of this, it's just, I would feel the most active point within our contemporary story that's activating what we're in now. But I wouldn't say it's the conception or origin point, just saying. But I do feel like if we can like unravel at least back till then, we'll be so much closer to touching the origin that it might actually just collapse as one, because there's such a deep, it's so deep that it becomes the one place. So anyway, what I heard was that in 1492, Black and white people, also there's many shades in between black and white, and like I don't mean to connotate everything I'm saying, it's just that the way words work around this, it flattens so many things, it excludes so many people, it excludes so many ways of being. So I do my best to say Black, brown, indigenous, and then you still have Indian, Asian descent. Like I'm just saying these words to know that when I say black and white, I'm holding many more people in that. But so anyway, it's not, the language isn't perfect for the nuanced expression of all that we are. And saying that, I continue on saying that white people didn't enslave black people, that black and white people entered into a contract with enslavement that we've been living out. So this controversial theory is that it's not that there's like a white person enslaving black people or women or people of color, indigenous people, that actually there's an energy of enslavement that is holding all of us equally. Okay, so now we're moving into a step out, a step behind, a step into like spirit and eternality, and then from there taking a step forward into the trauma bonds that have been formed and into our ancestry. So if we were to, because we know the pain of the victim, like the pain of the victim is well, it's well explored, it's well known, but what about the pain of the perpetrator? What about the pain of the white male? What about the pain of the person that held the slave whip in their hand? The pain of that person that was able to exhibit such horrors onto others. And it's not to excuse their actions, it's just actually, how do we pop out of this cycle? How do we stop blaming another for the pain that we all feel? Because that hasn't helped us be in a solution, that has only really, in so many details, exacerbated the problem. And I have not seen from that place that we really have been able to live through an evolutionary solution. So what if, and not to excuse it, but to just really like allow and sit with the pain of that perpetrators. And like, I'm also, the Nazis has also come to mind, because like the pain of what so many cultures have done that has genocide another culture has come through the descendants. So now I feel there's so many people who are descendants of people who have committed mass murders and like really horrific things that are written in so much guilt and pain and suffering, and are actually genetically, they've inherited that pain from their ancestry. And even though it creates, I would say, a separation from themselves, a strong dislike of themselves, a strong like not deserving to exist in themselves, but what it has also done is still perpetuates the same thing their ancestors are doing, because there is no space to know how to do anything else. There is a deep soul loss in whiteness and this concept and this energy body. I feel what we're experiencing is a deep soul loss. And in that soul loss, there is a lack of love. And when there's a lack of self-love, we know it's almost impossible to truly love another. We end up perpetuating the same pain that we're feeling. And once again, this is blanket statements, right? I would say that in the States we're experiencing an epidemic of soul loss. Doesn't mean every white person is connected with their soul. Like, that is obviously incorrect. And there's so many people who are doing the work to really restore and evolve and remember. But I guess I'm really just talking like broad strokes. How do we look at like the horrors that are being shared through culture, skin color, race, ways of thinking that are different? Because like if Nazi Germany, people were the same color, it was just a different culture and ways of being. And those things, it really promotes I feel a soul loss. And since I feel we all live in whiteness and we all live in a patriarchy and we all like have been conditioned by that, I feel a controversial statement that we all have a white man inside of us who's lost their soul. And we're all, and like the ways we orient ourselves is always in, and not, this is only in like one aspect of ourselves. This isn't in all of ourselves, but I feel it's in the part of ourselves that really knows our power, that really knows our self-worth, that really comes into participation in society and knowing that the changes we want to make come from love and not from harm, and actually feeling confident enough to push change through with love. I feel we have to really reconcile with our white man inside of us, because right now within our contemporary society, the white man is the only thing that produces change. That really, there's slowly things are starting to change, of course, but predominantly it's like we're living in a world carved out by white men, and most of this has been done by control, oppression, and fear. And how do we form a new society from unity and create harm to our current society and know that harm we're creating is for a deeper harmony, and trusting that if we don't reconcile with the power of perpetration, because any point of change is a harm for what's presently there, and not everyone will agree with it. But can we trust love enough? Like, can we trust ourselves enough? Can we trust the evolution of nature and of our own hearts enough? And I feel how we come into that trust and self and love is like loving the white male in us, like loving the perpetrator, and therefore reclaiming our power out of harm and into harmony. I feel we're not able to do this if we're just like blaming and hating on the white man or the perpetrator, whoever that is. Once again, I'll go into not saying it's not all white men in a moment. If we're hating on that part of the triangle, we're hating on that part of ourselves, and we're not really able to like have a strong backbone and to really just, perpetrate in love, like evolve, move forward. Like every evolution is a dissolving of something and a rising of something else. Okay, so once again, not all white men, right? Like not all white men. And I say that term because once again, I think the white male is an energetic body. It's like an energetic body that we're all reconciling with. And so to be a white man, you're like in the manifestation of that energetic body. And it can be really challenging to know how to be in your power and not perpetrate. And many times, I think white men are perhaps perpetrating within their power. But then we have this overcorrection now of like hyperfeminism and spiritual communities, like all of these things. And then we also, it's like, how do we really soften and really be in the grief of the wounded masculine, like the wounded male, and like to really allow that to exhale. And that ancestor, when I was in Massachusetts, I would see spirits. I would see like racist white spirits who was like shotguns, like staring down at me from like balconies. And I say this, and there's so many. I did feel this, and I did see this. But what was I seeing? Was that present as in like that? There's like that energy is sitting on those porches, or was I in some ways allowing my consciousness to be in many timelines? Like, was I actually perceiving the late 1800s and like seeing how the late 1800s is layered over 2019? It doesn't matter, because either way I'm saying the same thing, which is that the nervous system of 1492, of whatever year, like whatever year we want to talk about, is still present in the States. And it's still being lived. And therefore, when that person exits the house, they exit through that energy, spirit, and it's like a part, it's like in the air, it's in the molecular structure of the States. And like I'm talking about East Coast because that's where I've lived. I lived in Massachusetts for about half a year. I spent a lot of time in New York State working on farms, but I've spent some time in Vermont. I'm from Brooklyn. Like, so these are places I'm familiar with. I'm not talking about places I don't know, which is the South or the Midwest or the West Coast, because I haven't spent time there. And so when I talk about the States, I do feel that there are generalizations that are applicable, but then I also know that there are differences that I can't be attuned to because I haven't lived there. And so I'm just also saying that as a caveat. And so, yeah, what I'm saying is, can we forgive ourselves enough for being sympathetic to the pain of our ancestors and then exhibiting them? And then can we hold ourselves accountable to the fact that we are exhibiting the pains of our ancestors and not actually perhaps being as equitable or loving to Black, brown people and women as we think we are, because our nervous system literally does not know how to, and because the nervous system that we have all calibrated to is one that is of pain, and so it gives that same pain. Okay, so I have said many things. I actually don't know where I am in my trajectory. I've said so many different things around this. And so I want to kind of move into the third energy, which is holding the fact that, which is holding all of it, right? Because at any one moment, anything can be true, right? We can like actively notice that we're being racist, and then like feel guilty, or then feel shame, and then knowing the fullness of, I'm talking from a white person's perspective, know the fullness of our worth and our body and our soul, and like know how to be in the power. Like all of these things are happening at once. And so I guess I'm sharing this because I would love if we could all hold a wider perspective in our own individuality, and then from there hold a wider perspective as we interact with other people, and really include the field of our ancestors in this, and not only from a state of they were wrong or right, but where was their pain? How was their pain present? Where did it come from? And can we really reconnect the system to love? So have had work with people who've had ancestors that were racist, or like slave owners or something like this, and are still racist. Like, I've gone into someone's field, and I've been in people's fields where their ancestors called me the N-word, like, actively racist. And like, how is that coming through the consciousness of the descendant of the person I'm working with? And what can, as a practitioner, like how I show up is just in deep understanding of the pain that created the schism in that person's consciousness to call me the N-word. There is so much pain. Like, who hurt you? Like, who hurt you that you feel that this beautiful human being standing in front of you is less than you because of pigmentation? Like, where is that coming from? The energy of enslavement. There's an energy of enslavement that I don't feel belongs to any one body, culture, gender, anything. It's beyond, and it's coming through all of us, and it's showing up in this one way. But if we can go beyond that, we can free ourselves, I feel, from that energy and really reconcile the pain, go through the grief, and actually meet each other as humans first, humans first. So what happens, so I'm just going to share a bit of what happens when I meet these ancestors that have been slave owners or racist or something like this. It's what I always say is there's a miracle of healing. Like, there's something that I can metamorphosize I don't quite understand. Like, sometimes there's a literal story, and so one thing that sounds like, what's behind this? Like, what happened? And usually it's someone else that came and enslaved that ancestry in some way, or they have known pain or sexual assault, and then that same lineage did it to another. I've also witnessed like something I can't understand, which is just like an energy, like literally an energy. And so, we can go into alternative timelines and like other species and other beings really influencing the human race, but I really hesitate. I think even in the sessions, unless it comes really clear, it's always just like an energy, because it's never to give our power away. So now, okay, first we're going to blame white people, now we're going to blame the aliens. It's like, no, let's not. It's like we really have to take ownership of the ways we're holding our victimhood and blaming, and really take that autonomy to be in enough self-love and self-trust to like move forward. But just recognizing that our species has been influenced, like it really has, by energy. Is that it's, like I can say theories, but I actually don't think they're worthwhile, because I don't claim to know the truth. I just can recognize something came in that kind of thwarted. And in one person's lineage, it was sort of like a fear of knowing the self as God, and there's such a responsibility to knowing the self as creator. And for whatever reason, it was like, why would that responsibility create fear? But there was a schism. There was this, like, something happened in that, and it created a separation from source, and that separation became like it got fractaled into the lineage in a specific way, like valuing superficiality and like fearing connection with spirit. And it was one example. Like there's so many of them that can happen, but also sometimes just like standing there. I think so. History repeats itself, right? And so if there's a rhetoric that has come through the pipeline, the system wants to reset itself to that rhetoric. So sometimes me, just being in a black body and holding the consciousness that I do, and like just looking at their pain, dissolves the racism or dissolves something. There's an alchemy that happens just because there's the tone, like there's a signature tone that comes through my skin, it comes through my ancestry, that comes through your skin, it comes through your ancestry. And when we stand in like that divine code, and we don't allow the system to repeat itself, it like it can't help but reset itself. Like it opens and alchemizes, and it just kind of happens immediately, this remembrance. So there's so many ways that could happen. And so I'm talking from the lineage of the oppressor, and so from the lineage of the victim, and this is, we're all of these things. This is just talking in very general terms. Like, so I come from a lineage that has been victimized in so many ways. And then I also connect, I think, to a collective imprint, just being in a black body born in the States, because my parents are born from Central America. And so I'm Hispanic. And so there's there's all these variants to this. But I feel like I have kind of an imprint of slavery, just being black and being born in the States, even if that's not in my known lineage in a very clear way. It's like kind of it's in like the soul of blackness, And so from that, there's a lot of just like standing in one's power and autonomy, and like standing up. It's kind of what I said before. It's like standing up to the slave owner, and this is like in energetic history. And also, a lot of it's also just connecting to timelines where this doesn't happen. Like I know in one of my fields of consciousness, something happened. Like this actually happened over the course of a year. But it's like there's this one. It was on my mother's side. It was an island. It felt like near like the Caribbean island, and there was sugarcane, and I did a sugar detox, right? I didn't have any sugar for a month, and like something happened. I tuned back in, and basically all the slaves there, all the black people there had jumped into another timeline. And so when the slave owners came back, the island was empty. Like magical things like this, kind of resetting our nervous systems to true liberation and disconnecting timelines from enslavement, and connecting to timelines of beautiful natural beingness where we don't have to interact in the victim perpetrator bystander dynamic. This to me is quantum healing. It's we don't only heal the present, connect to the future we want, we change the past Because I really feel in so many ways the only way to meet our desired future is to live from our desired past, and to actually energetically change where we have come from so that we can change where we are going to. I feel complete. I feel like that was a really beautiful note to end on. And I feel that there is so much I could say about this, and there are so many nuances. I do feel, just like in reflecting of the words I've used, that I did my best to really talk from a broad perspective, and also just talk from what's true of what happens in generalizations of white men, black women, ladidas, like white women, all the things. I think I did my best to talk in the generalizations that we're seeing, but then also to highlight the nuances that are present, to talk like what's happening, and then talk about what could happen, and to just be as inclusionary as possible, and to not be not to be super definitive, but to really be expansive. I think I did my best to do that. And there's so much I could say about this, and I really love working with the intersection of spirit, culture, and the body of race, gender, culture, and then the consciousness and spirit that is eternal, regardless of these things. I like that there's and a lot of constellations, systemic family constellations, it depends on how the practitioner works. I feel like that modality has informed a lot of my understanding of how to be in that field. And then my own practice and knowing is compassion, like to really seed that field in compassion, to let all of it be, to let someone be racist, to not fight it because it's present. Energetically in that field, when ancestors calling me the N-word, I have to be porous enough and loving enough to just let that be. And then the pain surfaces, the grief, the anger, and it's not to make anything right or wrong. It's just can we really be present with what is, so that what is can have a chance to alchemize, and it's really holding something, and in the field of compassion, it's so something can't remain. I really do feel that way and believe that, and that's my daily practice. So in my life, so that's one thing, right? When I'm in that field of facilitation and I'm holding that space, I'm in that auric field, and I can feel my ancestors holding me. I'm not alone in that space. I'm with so many beings of love and light and consciousness. And so when I say, can I hold that space, it's more like I'm being held by that space. Rather, I don't have to hold it. I'm leaning into love, and love holds the space. And so it's my practice now for when people say stupid comments to me when I go on the street, and it's not, it's this thing of job and blah, blah, blah. But it's how much can I be held in the field of love, to let love lead and let love speak. And it doesn't mean I don't get angry. It doesn't mean I don't feel sad. I don't know what it means. It just means it's my practice. It's really the practice of holding the wider perspective, as myself, with myself, for myself, and seeding fields of true equity and healing and alchemy and transformation. So thank you for listening. I wonder, how offensive or non-offensive this was. I will post this. I'm nervous too, it's but I need and because I wasn't perfect. I'm not going to be able to express all nuances of this very complex theme perfectly, but I'm here to make an attempt. And every time I speak honestly and I do my best, it's the attempt of the heart. It's the attempt of love to come through something that has formed so tightly around itself and decided itself to be true, and it just doesn't need to be. So thank you so much for listening with me, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. However it is inspired to be continued. Blessings to you, and reach out if something I said resonates with you. Reach out if you want to work with like your ancestral field and also the more expansive light field of the ancestors. In March, last thing I'll say, in March, when COVID started and we really shifted, we really shifted timelines into what I feel is one of awakening. I felt something was activated, which I see as the golden realm of the ancestors. There's a lot of ancestral pain and trauma we have inherited, but there's also a lot of ancestral wisdom and power and excellence and just the guidance that's so beautiful and that's present. And I feel we have the chance to sort of transmute the trauma timeline into the exalted golden timeline that is our desired past, that connects us with our desired future, that is one in some way. So if this resonates with you and you're curious about the movement of your own ancestry, and like all ancestry from African to Irish to European to Asian to Indian to Russian, I think I've worked with the whole globe. I'm like thinking I haven't worked with like people in the poles or like Greenland yet, but also Iceland. I've been to people in Iceland, so I mean I really it's so rich, to like feel the spirits of the land all over the world. It's something I'm deeply grateful that I get to share and be with. Okay, so much love to you, and until next time.